Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is returning author Nancy Chadwick with her new book, The Wisdom of the Willow. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you for having me back.
It's been some time since your last book, and this book is about another tree. Now, your first book is called Under the Birch Tree. Is there any relationship? Is this a sequel?
It is not a sequel, though there is similarities between the two books. Being a tree, the tree plays a dominant character in both books. The first book is a memoir. This one is a fiction story. It is about four sisters, and three sisters face some life decisions, and they navigate those decisions through the wisdom that's taught to them by their mom under a willow tree. And the fourth sister, who is the youngest, tries to find her place in the family, and she kind of finds her place in her own way. It is kind of a very metaphorical story. I use the willow tree that is very symbolic of bending and swaying but never breaking. And actually, I set the story here on the North Shore. So there are some scenes that are taken from Winnetka here in Glenview, the Wagner Farm. Yes. I set the structure so that the reader can really get a sense of the characters. It is an alternating first-person point of view from each sister and mother.
I noticed that, Nancy, is very much of a local book.
Yes.
I see references to Well Met, and I also, I noticed that it's about Glenview. It feels so close by. It's almost like a little mini-series of my neighborhood.
Yeah, I tried to write, what I know, what I was comfortable with, and I really enjoy doing a lot of writing about place and setting and reflection. In being a resident of Glenview for over 25 years and visiting different pockets, I've just enjoyed that writing and reflection of the different areas.
It's very beautifully done. I can see the description of the locality and just little, details. Very well composed book.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think every writer's challenge really is to get a reader to be drawn into the story, into the character. And so when I set out to write a story, I want to make sure that both my characters and my storyline are very relatable so that my reader can want to turn every page and get involved and get into the story quickly.
Do you have any intended audience? Or were you part of, say, a writer's group that you look at that or think about it?
Yeah, my intended audience for this book is probably women between 35 and 65. And being a women's fiction book, it is really probably directed to women. Sisterhood are a lot of the themes that come through on the book. Mothers with daughters, and also those who are very nature-oriented, who love trees, who love taking walks into the natural world and just kind of decompressing.
Yes, I think there's a lot of contemporary, let's say, issues for women, sandwich generation, or
Yes.
You're looking at your past, you're looking at your career, just so many things that bring us together, but also we need the support from each other.
Exactly, yeah. So, the characters I created in the book, the sisters, there is an older sister and a younger sister, and they're all very different personalities. I have different goals in life, are faced with different challenges. So,
Yes.
and I drew upon a lot of my friends and a lot of, what I went through going through jobs and school, and tried to relate those into my characters.
Yeah, the crossroads of life.
Yes.
What you can do together.
Oh,
Perhaps
sure.
We need each other more than ever. But
Right.
but then we find out, we hear about the current situation is that we're more isolated. We feel there's fewer people to rely on.
Yes, yeah. And I think bringing the theme of sisterhood, of female relationships into the book was really important as well, and that we do have a connection, not only, we can among ourselves, but that we do have the natural world that we can rely on as well. And there's a lot of references in the book as well when, there's a lot of decision making that needs to happen that, part of the wisdom that was taught to the daughters was to take your time, go out, just, be alone, look out, and just be reflective.
I see that. I definitely see the introspective moments in the book. And I see that you're sharing with us a lot of the easy part of writing, your environment and the characters you're inspired by. Well, what was one challenge that you were not expecting that you found? Oh boy.
It's probably making the story gel. As a writer's most challenges, there's a lot of scenes coming up, and it's just really making those scenes flow and having an arc to the story, having the aboutness of a story, what happens to it, and that describing a book, you just don't want to talk about a synopsis of it, but it's what really happens into the story. So that's probably one of the challenges, just to make sure that there's enough happening in the story to keep things moving.
Well, building up is a writer's challenge.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
What are some activities or events you're doing to promote your book? Some marketing plans do you have?
Yeah, some events I do have. I am partnering with a publicist who is helping me out with all sorts of things, writing content for online literary magazines. Let's see what else. Some interviews, some Zoom interviews. So any book clubs also is available. So
are you seeking them out yourself, or are
both of us? Yeah.
Okay.
And being that the book is kind of local and the setting is here a lot, I'm kind of tapping into, especially indie bookstores over at the book stall and the book bin as well, working with them and.
Are these connections that you made from your first book?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes,
Good.
exactly.
So you're
yeah.
building that relationship.
Yes, yeah. And I always like to support independent bookstores as well. So,
Very true. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Well, in China, if you don't mind me saying this, but in Chinese culture, the willow is considered a feminine tree, and I find that was so central to your book. So I find that delightful.
Yes, well, growing up, my true favorite trees were always the birch tree and the willow tree. Had those on the house of where I grew up. So probably because of just the way they look and how they flow and their motion and how they grow. And so I probably always knew I would write a book about a birch tree and also about a willow tree. And I knew that just looking at the grace and the movement of a willow tree it is very feminine. Yeah. And given the nature of the strength of women when facing consequences and challenges. Yes. Sure, we may sway and we may have our moments, but yes, we still stand up strong and
don't break. Right?
And don't break. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's beautiful. Now, is this something that you learned about yourself while writing this book?
Yes. Yeah, I think the main thing I learned about was, especially in my writing, that I do have a versatility. I wasn't just stuck to writing memoir or personal essay. And the thought of writing fiction was really daunting. Yes. I thought, oh.
I heard this.
Yeah, I heard exactly. Oh, you actually have to make.
World. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to make things up, and I'm, used to just writing what I knew. But in studying the craft of memoir and personal essay, a lot of those skills and the knowledge and the experience, just the practice, does transfer over to fiction. So I was really able to create images in stories and reflection, fictional, based on what I had learned my past experience on nonfiction.
Yes, I also learned that picking up voices, right? Having a different voice for each character, that's not an easy skill to develop.
Right, but what is fun is to start with a character and developing a character. Everything from how the character physically looks, to their speech patterns, to their anomalies, to different things that make them particular. And then it's just getting into that character, into that voice and how they are. But, and everything in between is my voice, everything, all the other backstory and what a character might be thinking and so forth is very much my voice in my writing.
Well, it sounds like you enjoy this exploration.
I do, and sometimes when writing, whether it's a long form, a novel, or short form, or short story, it really, I never know how it's going to end, but I always have something that starts out. I always have an idea or a vision of where I want my story to go, and how it starts, and then how I'm going to get there. First drafts are, as they say, just really bad, very kind of scattered, and but writers got to start somewhere, and a first draft is a place to start.
Well, I know we've been in contact since your last book at Blocktoberfest and around town, right?
Yeah.
But I just, I really picked up that you're writing The Wisdom of the Willow from Facebook. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, on the marketing side?
On the marketing side, I am on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. In terms of marketing a book, I think posting on there updates in terms of the publication and my progress and how things are going in writing a book. It's also a good way for followers to see a writer behind their book and how they're doing. And it's not just the book itself and what it's about, but how things came along and about.
Perhaps a little bit of your research.
A little bit of research, yeah.
Do you have a plan? Like, did you have a 6 months plan or a 3 months plan? Because I definitely feel like I've been hearing about the book as in the last half a year, I would say.
Yeah, I really didn't have much of a plan, but I had a vision of what my story wanted to be. It first actually started out with 3 sisters, and then I made it to 4. So, I kind of tweaked things a little bit, but I brought in the concept of a willow tree to really enhance the story of what these sisters are trying to do and trying to find their place in life. So I actually wrote the first draft pretty quickly, probably in about 3 months.
Okay.
And then I'm a writer that kind of works things backwards. So once I get a first draft, I'll do an outline, and then I can see how the scenes and how everything progresses, and then I plot everything out. So then I go back, and then my next draft is a really serious draft. So
Yes. Wow. Wow, that takes a lot of organizational skills too.
yeah, it does, and I'm probably on the higher end of an organized writer, because I will have not only that, I'll have spreadsheets. Some writers have a lot of sticky notes and they kind of move things around, but I'll have a spreadsheet in terms of scenes and a timeline.
Okay.
So, for instance,
Yes, I noticed your book is by chapter by months of the year. So that has a certain chronological order.
It does, yeah, and that's probably how I think
Yes.
when I write.
Seasonally with a tree, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the book does take place Memorial Day to Labor Day. So I get in the summer and some getting into some fall seasons, and I can kind of bring in the metaphor into that a little bit and how the scenes are setting. And
Well, I've never thought about how to use a spreadsheet to plan a book, but that's a good tool to share with our listeners. So
it
yeah.
it is great, and there's different variations of kind of a spreadsheet. I just use an old-fashioned one myself on Excel, actually, or just in Word. I'm sure there's a lot of writer tools out there that have kind of spreadsheet kind of concepts. But that way I can kind of tweak it myself and move things around and, using your timeline and when the story takes place and your scenes and then what characters are active in what scenes. So that way you're a little more flexible as opposed to maybe an application, a writing application or a software. But it just works for me. What works for writers is all very
That's
different.
great to share with us. Now, how about the cover? Did you have trouble finding how you want the cover to look like, or was that a picture that you took yourself?
The cover was actually done by my publisher, She Writes Press. There is a designer that actually provided probably about 5 or 6 different covers, all very different, all very projected different images in themes. But like my first cover with my first book, I knew right away what the right cover was, and it just projected the image of softness, of reflection. The willow tree is there, of a very organic environment and something that is a calming, happy place.
Did you choose the font, or was that also part of the graphic artist's work?
Yes, part of the designer. Yes, she supplied me with a few different variations of the setup and the placement and how the pages are going to look. And so the design was very much a choice that lent itself to the story of the book.
So I can see how. Yeah, if you just have to choose 1 out of 5.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's hard, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Considering the audience, do you want a very contemporary looking cover?
Yes.
Or do you, choose a cover that's very much part of the story?
And timeless, right? Sometimes you want to go with something that is just like what the tree means. It's a staying power. Right?
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
Something, I guess, too flat, too new, too modern.
Right.
So,
yeah.
that's
And I
interesting,
also always take into consideration if a book cover is among other covers on a table, other books, what might stand out, what might be different. It's not necessarily, a bolder face type or a bright red and yellow, but something that's subtle that might be very appealing to somebody who's looking at a table full of covers.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, see, something I didn't think of. So, Nancy, what kind of reader response have you received so far?
Reader response has been really good, and I am so grateful for all the feedback that I've gotten so far. The feedback I have gotten is that it would make for a great book club selection.
Yes, for discussion, it encourages discussion.
Absolutely, yeah. So, moms with daughters, sisters, just getting together and talking about our life challenges and how we go about solving them and working through them and what's our inspiration for helping us through that. One reader response was, it's a great book to sit under your favorite tree with, to kind of think about your own life as you're looking up, into the branches, into the canopy of the tree, and just reflecting on your own life and in a setting such as this.
Well, I think one of the topics that stand out for me is that there's so many of us women who are part of that a caretaker for an elderly parent or an ailing parent, and we do need a lot of support to get through that. You know, caretakers have they have a lot of stress.
Yes, oh yeah, and it, but somehow we all work it out. Somehow it works out. We work among the sisterhood, among family, and everybody participating and helping out when and when they possibly can.
So, what connects you to Glenview?
Oh gosh,
That's probably a difficult question, right?
no,
Because you feel so immersed in all
yeah.
the wonderful things here.
Well, my husband and I have been living here for all over 25 years. When I first moved here, the what I was really excited about was Harms Woods. I'm on the east side of Glenview, and just having the woods nearby, all the way from Gulf Road,
Yes.
to be able to walk or ride my bike or run, and it goes all the way Skokie Lagoons.
It's so lovely, shaded, right? All times of the
Absolutely.
year, yes.
Botanic Garden, Park Center over by Lake Glenview. So in addition to all the pockets of parks and recreation, neighbors, it's a great community of people. And I also forget, living on the east side, that there's a west side, which is, by the time I drive to the west side to, maybe Milwaukee Avenue, I feel like that's just such a far end, but, I forget how big Glenview is and all encompassing and, different areas that.
Yeah, because the green space really makes you get away from. You don't even
Yes.
think that you're part of a city.
Right,
Perhaps, right?
exactly, yeah,
That's incredible, yeah.
And it just situated, access to downtown and in Old Orchard and Evanston and Wilmette and, just a radius that just is so close to Glenview and so accessible that it's just a really good community.
Now, from your walking trail along Harms, I think you told me right before the program you met one of your characters.
I
That
did.
Jingle?
Jingles, and yes, I'm a dog person, and one of my favorite dogs is named Jingles, and I see Jingles' parents out. Reddish, and excuse me, but I think it's a golden, but just the most friendly.
Redhead.
Redhead,
Yes.
yeah, tail wagging, wonderful companion. So
And
I
Jingles is
decided,
in the book.
and I decided to use Jingles in the book, yeah,
Yes.
and taking on Jingles' personality and kind of all wiggly and tail wagging and just follows the characters, follows Margaret and Joe, her husband, around the house, and
So you never know, right? What's part
Exactly.
of your life can
Right.
become part of your book.
Yeah, it's great inspiration. I mean, just walking along Harms in the woods and in the trails, and it's just inspiration that I may see something in a setting, or how the sun is just projecting and reflecting off trees, and it just kind of makes me think of a setting or something happening.
And you make that tree have a bigger role in the book.
Yes, the tree is a character in my book, and it is on the property of Margaret and Joe Dowling, which is the name of the family, and it is a center. So Margaret, the matriarch, sits her kids down growing up and teaches them a little bit of wisdom under the tree and about connection and how we're all connected. And then as they grow up and they're later in life, and Margaret is not doing so well, she has a health challenge. Margaret brings the kids back, the older adults now, back under the tree and has a chat with them. And so it's very cyclical and connecting, and returns back to where she started.
Something we need to remember. Well,
Yes.
Nancy, and what advice do you have for our writers out there?
I probably the strongest advice I'd have for a writer is to read. A writer myself, I know I'm so preoccupied with writing that I don't offer myself time to read. Read the books that you enjoy reading. Stories are born from reading books, being inspired by their stories, and I know they are for myself. So I have to actually plot out some time to read and also get to know fellow writers. And ask them what their writing projects are, and share stories and how they, what inspires them to write, and what gets them passionate and going and sitting in a chair and gets to write stories.
So those are two great tips. One, to read more, and to connect with other writers.
Other writers, yes.
Because they will motivate you to keep going.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And also writing groups are a
Good
very
place
strong, yes.
to meet them. And I think Glenview Library offers a writing group regularly. So.
And I heard about that. I am sorry to say I'm not part of the writing group, but I am part of Off-Campus Writers Workshop. They are based in Winnetka. It is a large global, actually, writers workshop that does have speakers every Thursday, and it's not only a great learning community, but we do a lot of sharing and education and good support.
That's a great resource to share with everyone. Thank you, Nancy, for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me back.
And thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.